What's going on? Jay LeBlanc here, wedding and portrait photographer. I have to tell you, I just got back from Costa Rica, and what a beautiful country it is. I just spent the last 20 hours traveling, and the first thing I want to do, I want to make a video for you. I want to tell you about all the camera gear that I brought with me to shoot photo and video along the way and document my journey through Costa Rica. If you've never been to Costa Rica, it is a beautiful country with gorgeous mountains, rainforests, active volcanoes. Costa Rica is only 51,000 square kilometers, or 19,700 square miles. For anyone living in the United States, that's only about the size of West Virginia. Yet they are one of the most biodiverse countries in the world. It is a beautiful country full of lots and lots of wildlife. Now, I'm not a wildlife photographer by any means, but I figured if I'm going to be in Costa Rica, I want to capture some of the beautiful animals that they have there that I can't see here in the United States. I went to Costa Rica with the intentions of photographing animals, landscapes, and a little bit of people and documenting my journey, kind of like a vlog style, but it turned out I did too much vlogging because I was mostly shooting animals. They're a little bit more interesting than I am. If anything I say right now doesn't make sense, it's because I'm a little sleep deprived. I spent the last 20 hours traveling from car to plane to layovers to delayed flights to long car rides, finally home, and now here back to my office to make this video for you, telling you about all the gear I chose to bring with me. Some of it was a good decision, some of it not so good, and the things I would do differently next time I travel. Full disclosure, my brain might be a little bit foggy from the amount of gallo pinto, casado, and nachos that I ate over the last 10 days, but it's okay. It was well worth the extra 5 pounds I just put on. Now, going into Costa Rica, I fully expected to be doing a lot of hiking. Costa Rica is full of national parks, so I packed everything into my Mindshift Gear Backlight 36 liter. If you know anything about Mindshift Gear, they make great products. They are a sister company to Think Tank, and their bags stand the test of time. They're built like a tank. I only use Think Tank and Mindshift Gear bags, and I've never had a problem with them in the 10 plus years I've used them. Hopefully, I don't dump all my gear out right now, but to give you a quick little preview of how everything was packed in here, take a look. Okay, enough of that. Let me break it down for you, what I chose to bring with me to Costa Rica and carry on my back the entire time I was there. This bag, fully loaded, weighed in at just under 25 pounds. So if walking around hiking trails with 25 pounds on your back doesn't sound like fun, trust me, it's not fun, and I'm in pretty good shape. So maybe you have to make some adjustments to suit your physical abilities. Currently, my main two camera bodies are the Canon R6, which I'm filming on now, and the Canon R5. I chose to bring the R5 with me on this trip because of the higher resolution sensor, and just for the fact of when shooting wildlife, you may not know how far away it will be, and even with a long lens, I still want the ability to crop into an image to maybe just make that picture a little bit more impactful. For the most part, I was walking around with the camera in aperture value mode because the lighting conditions in the rainforest change so greatly. One second you might be shooting a small lizard that's in a dark spot on the ground, and the next second you're pointing your camera up at a tree shooting a bird or a monkey that's running across the top of the canopy. Allowing my camera to make some of those exposure decisions for me allowed me to get the shots a little bit easier. Listen, I know some people may be purists and say we have to shoot in manual, but when it comes to wildlife and nature, animals are very unpredictable, so you have to be ready for whatever might run in front of you. So I chose aperture priority mode to make sure I was always able to get the shot. Very rarely did I miss too many shots because of my exposure. So I brought my R5 body with 4 batteries. 4 batteries was enough to get me through any shooting day, no matter how long it was, because every night back at the hotel and Airbnbs, I was able to charge up all those batteries to be ready for the next day, regardless of how much I was shooting that day. Now here's one thing you may have noticed. I have 4 of these Peak Design anchors on my camera. 2 where the normal camera strap would go, and then 2 coming off the bottom where I currently have my strap attached. The reason I do that is because most of the day I wear my camera strap across my body like a sling. This allows the camera to hang straight down at your side like this. I find it when you attach it to the anchor points where the strap is meant to go, the corner of the body kind of digs into your side. When you attach it to the bottom, it just hangs straight down, and it's much more comfortable of an experience, especially when you're walking around with a big lens all day long. I just have a Peak Design plate on the bottom and 2 of their anchor straps that my strap goes into. And I'm using the Peak Design leash strap, which I really like because if I want to wear it in front of me, I can quickly shorten it and keep it right at my chest. Or if I want to sling it across my shoulder, I can lengthen the strap and let it hang down at my side. Another tip, bring memory cards. Lots of memory cards. I brought enough memory cards to not have to delete a single picture the entire time I was there. This way I can wait until I'm home, make sure everything is backed up in multiple spots, because some of these images I may never get another chance in my entire life to make again. Make sure that you have your pictures backed up before you delete them. Buy extra memory cards. You'll thank me later. As far as lenses go, the Canon RF 100 to 500 f4.5 to 7.1 was my go-to for most of my wildlife shooting through my whole trip. I was able to get some beautiful close-up shots of wildlife near and far with this amazing lens. Between the ability of being able to zoom into 500 millimeters and then the ability to crop even more on the R5 sensor really allowed me to get some nice tight shots on some wildlife that was rather far away. Now, big shout out to Canon for sending me this lens to use on my trip, because I do not own this lens. But after this trip, this might be one I want to add to the arsenal. This thing is a beast. I absolutely loved it. I was a little bit worried about the size of it, being that I was going to be hiking around all day. This is a bigger lens, it's a little bit heavy, and I was going to bring my EF 70-200. But I wanted the extra reach, and after a little research, this lens is the same size as the EF 70-200 f2. You look at the two lenses next to each other, very little difference. Weight-wise, the 100 to 500 is actually a little bit lighter. Plus, with the 500 millimeters, you have more than double the reach, and that alone I think is worth it, especially when shooting wildlife. Now, when you're in the rainforest, surprisingly, it can be pretty dark, especially with a big covering of the canopy of the big, massive leaves that there are on some of these trees in the rainforest. I was a little worried about using this lens, especially when you get closer to the long end at 7.1, if there would be enough light to even take pictures of some of these animals. Now you might be asking if 7.1 is fast enough for shooting moving animals in a dark rainforest, and in most situations, yes. Sometimes my shutter speed was just too slow to capture a moving animal, but surprisingly, a lot of these animals, when you get close to them, they freeze. They look at you. They want to know what your next move is. And it's the perfect time to take a picture, so take advantage of it. Even when shooting at 6400 ISO, I found myself shooting sometimes at 1/15th, 1/30th of a second and hand holding it. Between the IS in this lens and the built-in image stabilization in the R5, I was able to hand hold a lot of these shots, even at slower shutter speeds. And if you find that hand holding a shutter speed that slow doesn't work for you, you can always lean against a tree or a post, or bend down to a knee, brace one of your elbows on that knee while you're shooting, and turn yourself into a tripod. Another good option, if you're worried about weight, would be the RF 100 to 400, which is much lighter of a lens, but it is a slower lens. So if you're going to be shooting in a rainforest, it may not be the best lens to take, but if you're going to be shooting out in well-lit areas, such as a desert or a Sahara, I think the 100 to 400 is a great option, especially if you're worried about weight. My next lens, my bread and butter lens, which should come as no surprise because I'm a wedding and portrait photographer, is the 24 to 70. I love this lens. This lens is also not mine. Big thank you to Canon for sending this lens to me to use on this trip. Like I mentioned, I'm trying to cut down my weight as much as possible while still being able to get the shot. The lens that I personally own is the RF 28 to 70 f2, which I'm currently shooting on right now. And that lens, if you have ever held it, is heavy. It is almost twice the size of this lens. And I figured for one stop of light, doubling the size wasn't really worth it. Plus, I gained image stabilization with this lens, which allowed me to shoot at slower shutter speeds in these poorly lit situations. The 24-70 was kind of my go-to lens when I was just unsure of what I was going to shoot. I was walking around the towns and the cities, doing some street photography, walking along beaches, just exploring. And in those situations, the 24-70 was a fantastic choice. I loved being able to shoot wide when I needed it, or have a little bit of a zoom. I think another great option would have been the 24-105, but I liked having the extra stop of light. If you're going to pick just one lens for travel, I think the 24-105 f4 is a fantastic option. It gives you that wide angle, a little bit of zoom, at a pretty good aperture as well. And the third and final lens I brought with me, I'm sure you could have guessed it, the 15-35, a nice wide angle lens, which I really thought I would use more. Surprisingly, this lens didn't come out too often. I used it a couple times for some nice big open landscapes, just to make them look even more vast than they already are. I also used it a lot for shooting video of different places that I was visiting that were maybe indoors. I used it for shooting a couple videos inside my hotel room, just for memories to remember what my hotels looked like. But I really didn't use this lens as much as I thought I would. Next time, I probably wouldn't bring this one with me, because in most situations, the 24 was wide enough for what I needed to do. And if it wasn't, at least on the photo side, I would just shoot a panorama and then be able to stitch it together later on and create the same wide angle effect that you get from 15mm. Another tip I want to give you is take your camera gear, put it into the bathroom overnight, keep the door closed, and that room will be a little bit warmer, so it doesn't take your camera gear as long to acclimate to the humid environment first thing in the morning. And then you won't get any shots like this that take a lot of saving with how foggy your lens will get, with the huge difference in temperature going from an air-conditioned hotel room to the very humid environment that is in Costa Rica. There was a couple days I would wake up in the morning, I would step out onto the porch or balcony, look outside, see this beautiful animal. I would run back, grab my camera, step outside into this humid air, and fog. And I had unfortunately missed a couple shots. When it comes to shooting in Costa Rica or any humid environment, I highly recommend bringing a lens cloth with you to help wipe down the lens. If you can, in the morning, maybe put your camera and lenses outside on your porch, somewhere safe. In Costa Rica, they have monkeys that will jump onto your porch and take anything that's sitting on there. So be careful where you leave it, but if you can leave it outside safely, I would recommend doing so to allow your camera gear to acclimate to the humid, hot weather, opposed to being in a cooler room with air conditioning overnight. The next piece of gear that I packed with me is the DJI Air 2S. I love this drone. It's small, it's portable, it's lightweight, it takes amazing photo and video. But the thing is, a lot of Costa Rica is national parks. So that really limited me to only flying this beaches and a couple other areas that were not as beautiful as some of these parks. So I really didn't use this as much as I would love to. Now, do I regret bringing it? Not at all. If you're going to Costa Rica, you may not necessarily need a drone unless this is something that you absolutely are looking to do, is shoot some photo and video from the sky. This is one piece of gear you could leave at home. And just remember, before you ever travel to other countries, make sure you know drone regulations, because every country has their own rules as far as what you can and cannot do with a drone. Such as, I had to register this drone in Costa Rica, just like you do in the United States, to be able to fly it there. With the drone, I have 3 batteries for it, but I only brought 2 just to cut down on weight, especially because when I did fly it, it was for only 10-15 minutes at a time. And I never went through more than 2 batteries in one day, even with strong winds flying it at the beach, including when I was sitting on the beach. I noticed there was a couple whale watching boats about 1.5 miles offshore. So I decided to put my drone up in the air and fly it out towards them. And boy, am I happy that I did. I was able to capture a whale with its baby breaching. It also made me happy I didn't pay the $50 per person to get on a boat and go watch the same thing. So maybe it's not so bad bringing the drone after all. The next piece of gear I brought with me. I probably spent way too much time watching YouTube videos comparing the Insta360 One RS to the most up-to-date GoPro. I chose to go with the Insta360 One RS for one reason. It's an action camera with a pretty good lens and sensor. And then in about 15 seconds, I could switch it out with this module, which makes it a 360 camera. And I love the idea of a 360 camera just for documenting what I was doing, having fun, playing around in the water, or just showing the environment from a slightly different perspective. I will say the Insta360 One RS is a great camera, but I think if I had to do it again, I would go with the GoPro. The reason for that being, I didn't use the 360 module as much as I thought I would. I used it a couple times here and there for some quick video or a picture, not as much as I really thought. And I think I could have gotten by with just a standalone action camera. And if I were to do that, I would definitely go with the GoPro over the Insta360 One RS, because I think the GoPro has slightly better color renditions, as well as some of the features that are packed into a GoPro make it a little bit more powerful of a camera. I will say though, the Insta360 app is phenomenal. It is super powerful, super intuitive, easy to use. When it comes to shooting 360 video and editing in that app, it is a great way to go about it, opposed to using a third-party editor. When it comes to a 360 camera, most people just kind of leave it in most of the auto modes. Maybe you're going to use one of the neutral profiles to apply color grade afterwards. I played around with some of the color profiles in here and shooting parameters. I just didn't love anything. The image that came out of here is good, don't get me wrong. In bright, sunny daylight, it's a great image. The HDR mode, it's good. It looks like HDR though, but I don't love it. I've had a few GoPros before and I just lean more towards the aesthetics of a GoPro footage versus what I get out of the Insta360 One RS. I love the idea of this camera being modular, being able to swap between action camera and 360 camera very easily. If that's something you're looking for, I highly suggest this over a GoPro and a 360 camera. If I were going with just an action camera, I'd probably stick with a GoPro. Next piece of gear I brought, the DJI mics. These didn't come out once. This, leave it at home next time. Now, as far as my workflow, every day I would be out all day hiking, shooting. I would get back to the hotel or Airbnb at night. I had a computer with me and I would take all the memory cards from that day. I would dump them onto a 4 terabyte external SSD hard drive, and then overnight allowing the hard drive to back up to a cloud. I also did not erase any of the pictures from the memory cards. I still have them on the cards until I have those pictures in 3 spots. Then I'll feel confident to erase the images from the cards once everything is backed up. It would allow me to look at some of the images, see how they turned out, see if I wanted to change something for the next day. Make sure you always review your images, because maybe you want to adjust your shooting style, maybe you want to get more tight shots and details, or maybe you got to get more wide shots and landscapes. I think reviewing your images at the end of each day really helps to make you better even the next day and the next. So by the end of the trip, you're taking fantastic pictures because you're in a new place or a new country and you see a lot of something. People who don't live there or have never visited there may have never seen this before, and they may find it to be the coolest thing ever. So don't be afraid to overshoot everything. And then when you get back home and you take your time to go through it, you have a lot of options. As far as the computer, the hard drives, and all that stuff, I would always leave that at the hotel, put it into the safe, and I wouldn't carry that around with me. You don't need to hike with a computer and hard drives and charging cables. Leave that stuff in the hotel, lighten the load a little bit, make it easier on your back. Now here's one travel photographer thing that might be a little controversial. Maybe because I'm coming from the world of weddings and portraits where you're not really tied down to a tripod, but I didn't see the point in bringing a full-size tripod with me. I never really use one in my normal workflow, and I didn't see myself hiking through a rainforest, stopping when I saw an animal or something interesting, setting up a tripod just to take the picture. I usually made do with leaning against trees, resting my camera on a branch, or whatever I had to do to stabilize the camera to get the shot. With that being said, I did bring a Joby Gorilla Pod. This thing's awesome. It's small, it's versatile, I can wrap it around a tree and hang my camera upside down from it. I didn't use this with the 100 to 500 lens because I think that's a little too much for it, but with the 15 to 35 or the 24 to 70, this does a great job. It's small, it's light, it's extremely versatile, and it's not big and bulky like a full-size tripod. Even if you have a carbon fiber tripod, I feel like it adds so much weight for the amount that I would use it personally that I didn't think it'd be beneficial to have with me. Now, you may find a different use for it. There was a couple times at my hotel where I was trying to shoot some long exposure stuff of a beautiful volcano as the clouds are going by. I stacked a couple chairs on top of each other and I put my camera on this tripod on top of those chairs, and it worked just fine. I didn't have any problems. I used my cell phone with the Canon Connect app to remote shoot the camera to help eliminate any vibrations from me actually touching the camera, and I was able to get some pretty good shots like that. Other than those couple scenarios, I really didn't find myself wishing I had a tripod with me, and I'm really glad I didn't bring one because I think it would have added too much extra weight. I probably spent more time planning what was going into my camera bag than I did planning this entire 10-day trip. This is just what worked for me. I just wanted to give you my insights as far as what I would do differently or keep the same for next time. And hopefully this helps at least one other person, because I know when it comes to planning for a trip like this, that might be a once in a lifetime opportunity. You want to be ready for almost any scenario that comes at you, but you also don't want to take every single piece of gear you own. If you ever get the chance to go to Costa Rica, I highly recommend it. It is a beautiful country, and pura vida.